War does not start with missiles. It starts inside the human mind. War rarely begins the way people imagine it. If you were to close your eyes and picture the start of a war, the images that come to mind are almost certainly violent and dramatic. The flash of missiles launching from their silos, the scream of jets as bombs detonate, the thunder of artillery, or the sight of soldiers crossing a border under a hail of gunfire. These are the moments we see in movies, the moments that dominate news headlines, the moments etched into history as the beginning. But these moments are not the true beginning. They are the climax. By the time the first missile leaves its launch pad, by the time the first bomb falls from the sky, by the time the first soldier steps onto foreign soil, the most important battle of the war has already been fought and won. It was won in a place with no physical territory, no clear front lines, and no body count. It was won in the human mind. This is the fundamental truth of conflict that is often overlooked in our analysis of geopolitics. When we discuss the rising tensions between Iran and America, the conversation almost invariably turns to the tangible, measurable aspects of military power. Analysts and pundits will debate the range of Iran's ballistic missiles, a number of American aircraft carriers in the Persian Gulf, the effectiveness of advanced defense systems like the Patriot missile battery, and the potential for asymmetric warfare through proxy groups. These are important factors. They represent the hardware of war. However, there is a parallel battlefield that is far less visible, but arguably more decisive. It is the battlefield of perception, a domain where governments, media outlets, social media influencers, and intelligence agencies fight for control. This is not a battle fought with steel and explosives, but with narratives, images, emotions, and information. This is psychological warfare, a term that has moved from the shadows of covert operations to the very center of modern statecraft. Some analysts and officials have explicitly described the long-standing tension with Iran as a form of psychological war. This isn't just a metaphorical description. It is a recognition that influence and perception are now strategic tools as potent as any military asset. A well-crafted narrative can undermine an enemy's alliances, demoralize its population, and create internal divisions more effectively than a bombing campaign. A strategically leaked piece of information can shift global public opinion and destabilize economies. To truly understand the intricate and dangerous conflict between Iran and America, you must look beyond the nuclear centrifuges, the sanctions lists, and the military posturing. You must first understand the oldest trick in the history of power, a psychological mechanism so potent that it has been used to start wars for centuries. It is a trick that manipulates our most primal fears, shapes our collective identity, and quietly transforms ordinary citizens from skeptics of conflict into ardent supporters of it. This is the story of that psychological trick. It is a story about how nations are led, step by step, from the fragile state of peace to the irreversible threshold of war. Every war, regardless of its scale or complexity, begins with a single, indispensable psychological requirement. You must create an enemy. This might seem like an obvious statement, but its profound implications are often underestimated. An enemy is not simply someone who disagrees with you or competes with you for resources. An enemy is a construct, a narrative figure onto which a society projects its fears, its frustrations, and its sense of moral outrage. Without a clearly defined enemy, there can be no true unity of purpose. Without unity, the immense sacrifice, risk, and suffering that war demands become politically untenable. A population will not willingly send its children to die, nor will it accept the economic hardship and social disruption of total war, simply for the sake of a complex geopolitical objective. They need a story that makes the sacrifice meaningful. This is one of the oldest and most consistent patterns in human civilization. From the city-states of ancient Greece to the modern nation-states of the 21st century, leaders have intuitively understood a fundamental truth about human psychology. People are far easier to mobilize when they believe they are facing an existential threat, a threat to their nation, a threat to their way of life, a threat to their very survival. In the decades-long shadowboxing match between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America, both sides have become masters of this psychological art. They have spent generations constructing, refining, and reinforcing powerful narratives about the other. Narratives that have become so deeply embedded in their respective cultures that they are now treated as objective reality. In the dominant American discourse, the narrative of Iran is constructed around a set of key themes. Iran is consistently framed as a destabilizing actor in the Middle East, a dangerous force whose influence spreads like a virus through proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. It is depicted as a theocracy driven by a fanatical ideology, a regime that chants death to America and sponsors terrorism against U.S. allies. The narrative focuses on its nuclear program, not as a potential deterrent, but as an existential threat, a weapon in the hands of an irrational actor. In this story, America is the guardian of stability, the defender of freedom, forced to confront a dangerous and unpredictable foe. Iran is the villain. Meanwhile, in the official narrative of the Islamic Republic, a completely different story is told. America is not a guardian of stability. It is the great Satan, an imperial power with a long and bloody history of interfering in the region's internal affairs. This narrative begins with the 1953 CIA-orchestrated coup that overthrew Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, reinstalling the authoritarian Shah. It continues through decades of unwavering U.S. support for the Shah's brutal regime, and then pivots to the maximum pressure campaigns, crippling economic sanctions, and the constant military threat posed by American bases encircling Iran. In this story, Iran is not an aggressor but a resistor, a sovereign nation bravely standing up to a global bully. America is the villain. Two completely different stories, two completely different villains. Yet both narratives serve the same fundamental psychological function. They simplify an impossibly complex reality. Geopolitics is not a simple story. The relationship between Iran and America is a tangled web of historical grievances, shifting alliances, energy market dynamics, economic sanctions that devastate ordinary citizens, and proxy conflicts fought in the shadows. It involves the competing interests of Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, and every other nation in the region. It is a multi-dimensional chess game that no single headline can capture. Most people do not have the time, the access to classified information, or the expertise to understand all of this nuance. The human brain, faced with such overwhelming complexity, instinctively seeks a shortcut. It craves a simple, coherent narrative, and that is exactly what these national stories provide. They distill the noise into a clear signal, complete with heroes and villains, defenders and aggressors. Once this story becomes widely accepted within a society, taught in schools, reinforced in media, and echoed by political leaders, the psychological groundwork for conflict is complete. The other is no longer a nation with a diverse population, a rich culture, and legitimate security concerns. It has been transformed into a symbol, an abstraction, a perfect villain. And when the villain is clear, the call to action is easy to hear. If the creation of an enemy is the foundational act, then fear is the fuel that sustains the fire. Fear is the most potent political emotion ever discovered. It works faster than logic, cuts deeper than reason, and spreads more efficiently than facts. Once it enters the public mind, it fundamentally alters the way people think, process information, and make decisions. To understand its power, we have to travel back in time, deep into the evolutionary history of our species. When our ancient ancestors roamed the savannah, the human brain developed a set of survival mechanisms designed for a world of immediate physical threats. A rustle in the bushes could mean a predator. A rival tribe appearing on the horizon could mean a fight to the death. In those situations, hesitation was fatal. There was no time for a detailed risk assessment. So the brain evolved a powerful shortcut. Threat detection systems centered on the amygdala, which prioritizes fear and reaction over contemplation. This system is designed to make us act first and ask questions later. It floods the body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, sharpening our senses and preparing our muscles for fight or flight. It narrows our focus, blocking out extraneous information and zeroing in on the perceived danger. This ancient survival system, so essential for our ancestors, is the very same system that modern politics exploits with surgical precision. During periods of rising tension between nations like Iran and America, pay close attention to what dominates the public conversation. The news cycles are filled with a constant drumbeat of threats. Threats about the range and accuracy of Iran's missile program, with maps showing how many American bases and allied cities are within reach. Threats about America's regime change intentions, with hawkish think tanks publishing blueprints for military action. Threats about Iranian proxies in the region, ready to launch attacks at a moment's notice. Threats about an American preemptive strike, sparking a wider war. Threats about retaliation, escalation, and worst-case scenarios that spiral into full-blown regional conflagration. Now, many of these discussions are based on real capabilities and real policy debates. The threats are not always imagined. But psychologically, the constant amplification of these dangers serves a purpose far beyond mere information dissemination. It is a form of priming. It keeps the population in a state of low-grade fear, a perpetual state of alert. This is the master key. Once people genuinely believe that danger is imminent, their cognitive landscape shifts. They become less tolerant of dissent, more willing to accept restrictions on their freedoms in the name of security, and more supportive of extreme political decisions. Fear makes military action seem like a necessary, even defensive, measure. It transforms preemptive strikes from acts of aggression into acts of survival. Fear compresses complexity, turning a nuanced geopolitical problem into a simple primal equation. There is a threat. We must eliminate the threat. It activates the oldest instincts in the human brain, overriding the more recently evolved centers of logic and reason. In the ancient world, the machinery for spreading war propaganda was slow and limited. A leader might give a rousing speech to his soldiers. The town crier might spread news and rumor through the streets. A few handbills or posters might be plastered on walls. The reach was local, and the pace was glacial. Today, the landscape of narrative is radically different. We have built a global narrative machine that operates at the speed of light. A single, carefully crafted video can be viewed by tens of millions of people across the globe within hours. A single, provocative headline from a major news outlet can shape public perception in entire countries before the facts can be verified. A single tweet from a head of state can move markets and trigger diplomatic crises. This is why modern conflicts are no longer just about territory or resources. They are fought in the domain of information. This is information warfare, a battle not for physical land, but for the landscape of human perception. In this war, the weapons are not bombs, but bytes. Not soldiers, but influencers. Not front lines, but trending hashtags. During regional conflicts involving Iran, for example, this information battlefield is as active as any physical one. Analysts have repeatedly warned that control of media and messaging is a critical, strategic objective. Both state-run media outlets and informal networks of supporters work tirelessly to frame events in a way that benefits their side. A confrontation at sea between Iranian speedboats and a U.S. Navy vessel can be depicted in two completely different ways, each with its own powerful, emotional pull. In one version, the U.S. Navy is acting defensively, protecting international shipping lanes from harassment by provocative and reckless Iranian forces. In the other version, the heroic Iranian Revolutionary Guards are standing up to the arrogant and bullying presence of a foreign navy in their sovereign waters. The same event can be described as defensive or aggressive. An action can be framed as a liberation or an invasion. A policy can be spun as protection or domination. The difference is rarely in the raw event itself. The difference is entirely in the narrative that is attached to it. This is a fundamental aspect of human cognition. We do not interpret reality directly through some pure, objective lens. Our perception is always mediated by the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we are told. We are narrative creatures, and our understanding of the world is built from the stories we consume. Whoever controls the narrative, whoever gets to define the terms of the debate, to frame the events, and to tell the story first, effectively controls the perception of reality for millions of people. For the vast majority of human history, our ancestors lived in small, tight-knit groups, tribes, These tribes competed for scarce resources like water, food, and territory. In this world of constant competition and occasional conflict, the ability to quickly and accurately identify us versus them was not just a social skill, it was a matter of life and death. Trusting the wrong person or failing to identify a threat from a rival group could mean extinction. The human brain became, in essence, a finely tuned tribal instrument. It evolved powerful instincts for group loyalty, in-group favoritism, and out-group hostility. These instincts, honed over tens of thousands of years, are still very much alive within us today. They are the ghost in the machine of our modern, globalized world. We no longer live in tribes, but we have transferred that tribal loyalty to new, larger entities. Our nations, our ethnicities, our religions, our political parties. When tensions rise between countries like Iran and America, something ancient and powerful awakens in the human brain. The tribal instinct kicks in. This instinct activates a binary, us versus them worldview. It simplifies the complex reality of millions of diverse individuals into two monolithic categories, us and them. People on the other side cease to be individuals with their own hopes, fears, families, and dreams. They become a category, an abstraction. Psychologists call this outgroup homogeneity, the tendency to see members of an outgroup as all the same, while recognizing the diversity and individuality within one's own group. This process of abstraction has a crucial psychological effect. It removes nuance, and most importantly, it removes empathy. It is incredibly difficult to hate someone you know personally, someone whose story you have heard, someone you see as a human being with a complex life. But it is terrifyingly easy to hate an abstract enemy, a faceless category labeled the enemy. Once this abstraction takes hold across a society, the psychological barriers to war begin to crumble. The other is dehumanized. They are no longer people we could negotiate with, trade with, or coexist with. They are an existential threat, a virus to be contained, a problem to be solved. And when a group of people has been successfully dehumanized, the idea of going to war with them no longer feels like a tragedy. It can begin to feel like a necessity, even a moral duty. As the tribal instinct is activated and the enemy is defined, another powerful psychological force emerges, the intensification of identity. When an external threat is perceived, people's attachment to their national or group identity becomes dramatically stronger. Flags, which on a normal day might be just a piece of cloth, suddenly become deeply meaningful symbols. They are displayed on cars, on houses, on social media profiles. National anthems, often ignored, are sung with fervor. Historical grievances, long buried, are resurrected and infused with new emotional power. Symbols become emotional triggers, capable of instantly summoning feelings of pride, unity, and defiance. This is the psychology of cohesion under threat. When the external world feels dangerous and unpredictable, people naturally seek safety and belonging within the group. They rally around the symbols and stories that define who they are. The group's history becomes sacred, its heroes are elevated, and its narrative of itself becomes more rigid and unquestionable. Political leaders are acutely aware of this phenomenon and are skilled at exploiting it. They consciously use rhetoric that emphasizes national dignity, sovereignty, and pride. They speak of the nation's glorious past, its sacred mission, and its unwavering spirit. They frame the conflict not as a political dispute, but as a battle for the very soul and survival of the nation. When identity becomes central to a conflict, the stakes are raised to the highest possible level. People are no longer arguing about policy details like sanctions or uranium enrichment levels. They are defending their very sense of self. When a population believes its identity, its history, its values, its way of life is under threat, support for confrontation rises dramatically. Compromise can begin to feel like betrayal. Peace can start to look like surrender. And war can be embraced as the ultimate act of self-preservation and national honor. Here we arrive at one of the darkest and most effective psychological tricks in the entire playbook of war: the illusion of simplicity. Real geopolitical conflicts are monuments to complexity. They are not straight lines, but tangled knots of causality. The conflict between Iran and America is a perfect example. To truly understand it, one would need to grapple with the 1953 coup and its enduring legacy of mistrust, the 1979 Iranian Revolution and the subsequent hostage crisis, the Iran-Iraq War, in which the US tilted towards Saddam Hussein's Iraq, decades of economic sanctions that have crippled Iran's economy, the 2002 axis of evil speech, the nuclear negotiations, and the subsequent US withdrawal from the deal. The complex web of proxy conflicts across the Middle East, the competing strategic interests of Israel, Saudi Arabia, and other regional powers, the global politics of energy and the role of OPEC, the influence of Russia and China in the region. This is an intellectual burden that few are willing or able to carry. And so, the public discourse, aided and abetted by media and political actors, performs a kind of alchemy, transforms this leaden complexity into the gold of a simple story. The entire conflict, with all its nuance and contradiction, is distilled into a single, emotionally charged question: who is right and who is wrong? This simplification is not an accident. It is not merely a byproduct of lazy journalism or short attention spans. It is a function of how the human brain works. We are pattern-seeking creatures who are deeply uncomfortable with ambiguity. Ambiguity feels like uncertainty, and uncertainty feels like danger. Clear moral narratives, on the other hand, are deeply satisfying. They provide us with a sense of order and understanding. They give us a world with clear heroes to root for and clear villains to root against. Once a person adopts one of these simplified moral narratives, once they have internalized the story of American aggression or the story of Iranian fanaticism, changing their perspective becomes extraordinarily difficult. To question the story would be to question their own moral compass, their own judgment, and the worldview of their community. The story is no longer just an explanation of events. It has become part of their identity, and people will defend their identity at almost any cost. There is a stark reality about international conflict that is rarely discussed in polite company. Yet it is a crucial piece of the psychological puzzle. External conflict can be immensely beneficial for those in power. It can strengthen internal control, unify a divided populace, and silence dissent. This is not a conspiracy theory about wars being manufactured for cynical purposes. Rather, it is an observation of a consistent historical pattern. When a society faces a clear and present danger from an external enemy, a powerful psychological dynamic takes hold. Internal divisions, political squabbles, and social grievances that once seemed paramount suddenly appear petty and irrelevant. Criticism of the government can be framed as unpatriotic, even treasonous. People naturally rally around their leadership, offering them a rally-round-the-flag effect that boosts approval ratings and grants them greater political latitude. Throughout history, leaders have observed this pattern repeatedly. An external enemy is the ultimate tool for creating internal cohesion. It focuses collective attention outward, simplifying the political landscape and reinforcing the power and legitimacy of the central authority. External threats redirect public frustration away from domestic problems and onto a foreign target. This does not mean that all conflicts are cynically manufactured for this purpose, but it does mean that once tensions appear, they inevitably reshape domestic politics. They can be used to justify a crackdown on domestic opposition, to pass legislation that expands state power, and to rally the population behind a government that might otherwise be facing serious internal challenges. In this sense, the psychological trick that starts wars is not just about defeating an external enemy. It is also about mastering one's own internal political landscape. When people close their eyes and imagine war, they see the physical destruction, the ruined cities, the columns of smoke, the missiles and the armies. But the most decisive battlefield of the modern world is invisible. It has no physical coordinates. It cannot be seen on a map. It exists inside the human mind. It exists inside our beliefs, our fears, our sense of identity, and the stories we tell ourselves about the world. The enduring tension between Iran and America is not merely a military or a geopolitical story. At its core, it is a profound psychological one. It is a battle for influence, for narrative control, for the emotional loyalty of millions of people. This is the hidden dimension of conflict. Modern wars are not decided solely by weapons, military strategy, or economic might. They are profoundly shaped by how millions of ordinary people interpret events. What do they fear? Who do they trust? What story do they believe about themselves and their enemy? And once those beliefs harden into certainty, once the fear becomes deeply embedded, and once the narrative of the enemy becomes accepted as fact, the path toward conflict becomes terrifyingly easy to walk. The arguments for peace, for diplomacy, for compromise are drowned out by the primal call to defend the tribe against the threat. Understanding this psychological dimension does not magically solve the complex geopolitical tensions between Iran and America. It will not dismantle a single missile or lift a single sanction, but it does reveal something of profound importance. War is not only a clash of armies, economies, or territories. It is, first and foremost, a clash of stories. It is a battle of competing narratives, each fighting for dominance in the most valuable territory on Earth, the human mind, and the most powerful weapon in that ongoing, invisible clash is not made of steel or explosives. It is made of fear, identity, and the stories we choose to believe.